the Mace's gradual realization of just how dangerous this insignificant-looking guy really is happens through the course of that scene, and then it's confirmed in the action sequence that follows. Yeah, I when I have reread that, I get a little smile out of it. I like that stuff.
Which of your Star Wars novels did you enjoy writing the most?
Trigger. Without a doubt. Because for one thing, I knew exactly what the story was going to be. Because I pitched it under pressure. I think Mike is off doing his writing workshop. Mike Stackler was a writer who preceded me in the order of the New Jedi Order. And when I was originally hired to do that book, I was told that they wanted me to take this Jyn Lucino character, Vergere, and make her like the Yoda of the New Jedi Order. And what they wanted her to do is teach Jason how to withdraw from the Force so that he would be completely undetectable, even by other Force sensors. Right, so he could sneak in and do secret agent stuff. And in Onslaught, Mike just, the second book of the NJO, Triggers 13, he just casually references that ability as just something that all of the current crop of Jedi already know how to do. When I went to the story conference, I mentioned that to the editors, and they looked at each other and they're like, "Oh, right. That was what we wanted you to do." We didn't even notice. And that's what I left that first evening at the story conference in a panic. But the next morning I just got this idea of having Vergere not be never really knowing what her game really is. Right? Because Jason doesn't know. So I decided I wasn't going to let the readers know either. And the whole, the way I pitched that story was, what if Jason is already a captain who's being tortured, and she comes in as his rescuer, but what she says to him is not, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm going to rescue you. What she says to him is, everything I tell you is a lie. Every question I ask is a trick. You will find no truth in me. And so Jason, that let me have Jason's focus be on what is she trying to do to me, right? Not just surviving it, but trying to understand why she's doing it. And I also knew that I was going to get to have a Force-using character say, there's no such thing as the dark side. I knew I was going to get to do that. And I knew I was going to get to do the only dark side you need to worry about, Jason Solo, is the one inside you. And I knew it was going to be a shitstorm. and I was so excited. One of my best friends at the time was an even bigger Star Wars geek than me. And when I got back from the story conference, I went over to his house. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, John. I'm going to fuck with these people like they've never been And because of that, because it was the original title of that book was Underworld, which they nixed because I think it was a Quinlan Voss arc in the Dark Horse comics when it was going by that name. They preempted my name, but the whole Underworld, the story was plotted as a kind of classical Greek mythology journey through the underworld, right? Stations of the underworld returning to the whole Joseph Campbell thing. So I had the whole thing, and it's a bottle story, right? It's only about the characters in there. The wider war that was going on around them, not an issue. So I didn't have to coordinate with anybody. I told them what the beginning was going to be, what the end was going to be, and just did it. And whole thing. It was actually the last book of my career that I turned in by the deadline. It was really fun. I've never had that much fun with a book. No. So there you go.
So I assume the answer to my question is going to be that, but if, aside from Revenge of the Sith, are there any of your books that you'd like to have adapted into a live action?
Oh, no.
Or not?
Shadowfire. If they were going to adapt into a live action, or even an animated version, I think Carl would rule in an animated version.
Yeah.
But Trigger, I don't think works without the context of the New Jedi Order. I mean, I know there are some people I know who have just read that because they were fans of mine, not NGO fans, and they still like it. But I feel like without that context, it's not that really that powerful a story. You know, if you didn't know Anakin and watch what happened to him in Star by Star, yeah. If you didn't know that, you don't know where Jason is at the beginning of this book. Because I don't do backstory. You know, if I can avoid it, I hate exposition. I hate it. I try never to tell people anything more than what they need to know to understand what's going on right now. And so, Trigger, yeah, favorite Star Wars book, fun to write, but I don't think it would work that well in an adaptation.
Yeah.
And also, there's a lot more ass kicking in Shadow.
It's graphic. It's very graphic, but that's one of my favorite parts about it is how really graphic it is.
That's literally what they asked me for.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, they were going to take out the fever wasp scene.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, are you kidding? Come on. And they said, okay, well, why don't you just end it before he destroys the brain with his lightsaber? And I'm like, okay. So in that scene, he tells him what he's going to do, and then it's just, Mace, turns went to work or something. It's the other job. But that was the only thing that they thought was over the top. It was the only sequence that I had to sort of struggle to keep.
Interesting. Are there any parts of your novelization of Revenge of the Sith that you would have liked to have included in the movie?
Oh, a lot. Well, and a lot of them are based on stuff that Mr. Lucas shot but didn't actually put in the film. There are sequences in the book that they're in the book because these were scenes in the shooting script, which is what I was working from. And some of those I kind of like. A lot of the political stuff doesn't really show up in the movie, but it was all there in the screenplay. Actually, it's maybe heresy, but when I read that shooting script the first time, I called up Shelley Shapiro. She was the Star Wars editor in New York, and I said, if what I'm seeing on the page here, if this is what this movie is going to be, this is going to be the greatest freaking Star Wars film ever. This is gonna blow away Empire Strikes Back. The script. It's for sale. You can read it. I like it. I liked it better than the final version because there was more in it. And but maybe I can't really think of. Maybe the sequence between Obi-Wan and Padme in the book, where Obi-Wan is letting Padme know that he knows that they're in love and secretly married, but he can't say it out loud because he's a Jedi and the rest. And when she realizes what is going on, it's right before she leaves to go to Mustafar. Yeah, just that scene, that little, there's just in the book, it's just a little scene where he's looking for Anakin. Anakin's in trouble. He doesn't know exactly what's going on, and as he's leaving, she's like, you love him too. And Obi-Wan just turns and says, "Please do what you can for him." And walks out. And I would have liked to have seen something like that. I would have liked to have seen that relationship between Obi-Wan and Padme. But it's already 2.5. And also scenes like that, you can get away with it because a book doesn't have to keep your eyes locked on it for the entire runtime. You know what I mean? The quiet scenes, a lot of the quiet scenes in my stuff, the ones I like the best, in my version, because you just couldn't put those on screen. Right? But you could, but it would be a very different movie, not necessarily better. Yeah, just my opinion.
Yeah, I would have liked to see the exchange between Dooku and Palpatine before Obi-Wan came in.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
I'm very fond of my particular version of Dooku. I had a lot of fun writing the stuff from his point of view. I'm going to be on a panel later on this time with Sean Stewart, who is largely responsible for my take on Dooku. He wrote a novel, Clone Wars novel called Yoda Dark Rendezvous, that involves, if I recall correctly, it involves a young Dooku, like 12-year-old Dooku, in training at the Jedi Academy. And Stewart's evocation of this young, developing, entitled sociopath was so evocative for me. I'm like, okay, that's it. That's how I'm going. I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with that for his whole sequence and so on. Which, in the screenplay, he has a bigger part in the original shooting script. There's more above him. Again, artistic choice on Mr. Lucas's part to make that, the first 10 or 15 minutes, and the screenplay is the first third. It's 30% of the actual page count. But, his movie, he knew what he wanted out of it. Wasn't the same thing I wanted out of it, but that's inevitable with me.
Yeah, it's interesting that he, after reading that part about Dooku, it gives me a very different perception of his personality, who he was. And it's funny you use that word sociopath, because when I was reading it, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh my God, he's a sociopath.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and again, I think this is something I borrowed from Sean, the bit about him categorizing other people. They're not people to him. They are assets or threats or irrelevant. There's no other category.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Yeah, I may have stolen that from him.
Looking back now, are there any parts of any of your novels that you would have liked to have written differently? Whether it's a character, their personality, a different sequence, anything you would have changed at all?
In Star Wars. Well, I will say that the answer is generally no. Even though I would do it differently if I were doing it now. What I was doing then was literally the absolute best I could do then. And I'm willing to let it stand on it. I'm sort of the opposite of Mr. Lucas in that way. Loves to tinker with stuff he's already done. Me, I'd rather do something new and just let whatever I think are the flaws stand, because the stuff that I don't like about my books, stuff that I have not liked about my books, is often something that somebody comes up to me in a con or writes me a letter or something. They go, this right here, that just really spoke to me. Jesus. But the thing is that you never know. I'm sorry, are we running out of time? Oh, thank you. I don't have glasses.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, who's your favorite Star Wars character and why?
Oh, Obi-Wan. I mean, you can't read Revenge of the Sith without realizing that it is largely a valorization of that character in many ways. I mean, he is literally described by the author as the ultimate Jedi in that narrative. I just dig it. I love Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan, but I think McGregor's is tremendous. I think he did a great job. And the thing about Obi-Wan that is not really true of like Yoda is that Obi-Wan fundamentally is a deeply kind person. He's deeply kind, and that is kind of that's like Luke's superpower, right? I mean, Luke's superpower is that he cares about everything, right? And he wants to save them. Obi-Wan is he's so decent. He's always trying. You know, he's always trying to be a little bit better because he doesn't think that he's that good. He's trying to live up to an idea of who he thinks he should be. And in the process, he mostly loses sight of how amazing he already is. But I have a tendency to wax poetic in my prose from time to time, which I sort of let run free in Revenge of the Sith, because I was trying to evoke that sort of classic epic tragedy. I was an actor. I studied Greek theater in college, and that's what I liked. That's what I was going for, was this sort of elevated, operatic kind of style. And my favorite instance of my going over the top is the sequence there on the battle bridge of the Invisible Hand. I can't remember the actual lines, but it's just it is one of those sequences in there that this is Obi-Wan Kenobi right now. There's one there where it's just describing him giving himself to the Force, and that's how they win. Right? He opens himself up, becomes a window into the Force, sort of thing. And and it is from, I guess, a literary criticism standpoint, it's completely purple and over the frame top. But it works for me. It works for me when I read it. When I reread it, I read that and I'm like, oh, man. Absolutely. We got what, 10 minutes left? Yeah. Oh, geez. Let's start in front. I talked to you earlier, so how about you?
You write a lot of characters who have to do with their inner darkness.
Right.
So I was wondering, have you ever thought about writing a story about Mara Jade, who was kind of like a character who went from being an assassin to a jail at night?
I'm sorry, give me the name again?
Mara Jade.
Mara Jade.
Oh, right. No. Although I did do an homage to Mara in Luke Skywalker Shadows.
Yeah, it doesn't like red.
Yeah, it doesn't like bossy redheads. That was literally a direct Mara reference. No, I was never that interested in that part of the storyline. And that's literally the only reason. If you're interested in assassins who try to be better, you might look at my non-Star Wars stuff, because that's what the main character is. So there you go. Yes.
I have a feeling that you're not gonna directly answer this, just out of because that's the way the authors are. But I think a lot about, I love the relationship elements of Star Wars. And so one of my favorite moments in Traitor is when Jason is at their old apartment and he's walking through the dining room and stuff.
Oh, I like that too.
Do you have strong feelings or an answer to whether that was Anakin or not? the vision of him, or not?
Do I have strong feelings? Yes. Am I gonna tell you what they are?
No.
But I will explain to you the reason for this. This is actually a conscious policy that I inculcated because I used to spend a lot of time on the force.net, especially during the MJO, just talking with the fans and stuff, just kind of seeing what they thought. And a lot of people would ask me about Trader because it was very controversial in fandom. And they would ask me things, and I said, and I would say, you know, they would ask me, does this mean this? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what I meant by that because it's not my story. It's actually your story, right? The only story that you encounter is the one that happens inside your head when you read these little black marks on the page, right? My opinion about what something means in here does not count for more than yours. It doesn't. I literally believe this. This is an article of faith with me, that what a story means, anything in a story, is what it means to you personally when you're reading, right? So I figured if I tell people what I thought I was trying to say, they might mistake that for the truth, right? But it's not. It is what I was trying to say, but because of my privileged position with my name on the cover, I think that people would give my opinion on this entirely too much weight. Because literally, I don't know better than you, right? So that's it.
Can I ask, what was your inspiration for Jer, or like, how'd you come up with such a character like that?
Well, I didn't.
Yeah, well,
And
like
Jim
your
had
version
seen
of
it.
her, yeah.
And she was always, there was always an ambiguity about her.
Uh-huh.
Well, good guy or bad guy. But the whole ambiguity in Trader, that was the desperation move, because that was actually the way that hit on me, that struck me as what would make it the most interesting book to write. That's all it was. So, yes.
To expand on that, when you took Trader, at the time, did they have the next, basically the last set of books where Jason turns to the dark side and you have all this stuff going on and he ends up dying? So, or am I getting...
That was a retcon.
Yeah, that's right.
That is a later interpolation.
Right.
That happened after I.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that was
in
the
that
next
period.
series. Like I said, my
That
brain...
was the next series, yeah.
So with you doing Trader, they took some of what you probably put in. Did they ask you about any of that as they put it in?
No.
Okay.
It's not my stuff. The stuff that I do for Star Wars is owned by Star Wars. You know, it was owned by
So they're-
Lucasfilm Licensing, and now it's owned by Disney.
So they're going to do whatever they feel.
They can do whatever they feel like. This is actually, there are a couple of characters, 3 characters from Shatterpoint who appear in Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mordor,
Yeah.
literally just so they wouldn't kill them off during the Clone Wars. Literally, that's why I put them in, because one of them got badly injured. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to lose these guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. Did you what exactly was kind of the inspiration for Anakin's falls on the dark side and in the sort of Death Star dragon that is sort of his fear basically, sort of psychologically come from?
This is a little bit of a story. When I originally wrote that book, the dragon was not a metaphor for fear; it was a metaphor for anger. It was Anakin's rage, and it was burning through the nuclear vault that enclosed his heart. You know, again, over the top imagery. Lucas didn't like it. He didn't like it. He didn't like it because he thought it suggested the image of the dragon in there. He thought it suggested that the dark side was something. It was an external force that was working with Anakin to corrupt him, and he wanted it to stay. He wanted the force that corrupts Anakin to be Anakin, right? It is. If you'll forgive me patting myself on the back, it's almost like the line out of Trader, where Vergera tells Jason the only dark side you have to worry about is the one in your own heart, right? said, you gotta cut that whole motif, and it's a motif, there's like 5 sequences throughout the book, and it develops and it changes, and it was a major part of my whole, this whole artistic inspiration, ambition I had for this story. And they told me I had to take it out. And there was I've told this story elsewhere, there was a large screening match between me and several lawyers and, editors. But the upshot of it was that the next morning I woke up with a tremendous hangover and and this idea about stars burning. And so instead of the dragon being the symbol of Anakin's rage, it is the symbol of his dread, right? Because that's what it is. That in Star Wars, almost, I don't think it's ever stated specifically, but you can see it everywhere. It's fear. It's always, fear is what drives the dark side, because the dark side is about control. And it's fear, people who are not fearful don't need control. Right? So it was a fortunate editorial choice on his part, because I really like that as it stands now, better than I did in the first place. Are we done? 5 minutes. Yes.
So in terms of authors going back and revisiting their works, a year later, and how you feel about it and things, have you listened to Jonathan Davis's performance of Revenge of the Sith?
Yes. It's brilliant. That is the greatest audiobook I have ever heard.
Absolutely.
His performances are spot on. But also just they have sound effects. They have music. They got the score from the friggin' movie under my words. It's very thrilling. I still have 5 or 6 of them. I'm giving most of them away.
Very, very glad to hear you say that, because I recommend that multiple times a week to people. I mean, the book in general, but the audiobook, I said,
The audiobook is so good, and it's unabridged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yes, in back.
This is for my son.
Okay.
My question was, and it's something you only kind of touched on recently. Luke Skywalker in the Shadows of Endor. What was it like doing that whole book with like the whole deeper darkness and the weird dualities and whatnot? And this is kind of a secondary question. Would you add more Lando?
I love Lando. Well, see, one of the things I like best about that book is I set it up specifically so to give sort of myself the psychological freedom to kind of go kind of nuts to the wind, sort of Brian Daly kind of thing.
Right.
Flying volcano and destroying whole solar systems but one of the upshots of that is that I got to write these iconic characters. I mean, starting with Wes and Hobby, right? Jansen.
Yeah, Wes Jansen.
I get to write all of these guys that have been written by people that I really admire, and I got to have some fun with them because doing it in that kind of metafictional way let me take all the dark stuff and go, yeah, it's just part of the story, right? Now, it's worth saying that when I wrote that book, I was actually struggling with an extremely dark period in my life, and I was suffering. I was feeling exactly what I described Luke is feeling. And the solution that I had for Luke was the one I decided on for myself. That's the way I got through it. So yeah, so in that sense, yeah, there's some autobiography in there, but the rest of it was just, I just wanted people to not put it down.
We couldn't. It was beautiful that Luke kind of found a light in all that darkness, in all that empty shadow, and then he can't find the light.
If you can't find the light, you can be the light.
Exactly.
Now, fortunately, in my case, I found it, but it took a long time. Last question, or maybe last 2? Yeah.
So I know you talked about wanting to write kind of a retirement big send off for Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah, that was yours.
Yeah. Did you have anything more specific planned about that?
No. Absolutely. The only reason I wanted to do that was because I thought it would be cool to be the author of Luke Skywalker's last adventure.
Oh, sure.
That would be something that I would be still smiling about on my deathbed. And that was, I mean, that was the whole thing. It was just, I just thought it would be cool.
Oh, sure.
Save the galaxy one last time, check out. Han Leia off with happily ever after. Yeah, it didn't work out that way.
It will in our hearts.
Oh, thanks. Thank you all for being here as well, Legend Consortium 2023, and one more round of applause.